All right, we're going to look at masks and different ways to apply those. I have a picture here that I took in Switzerland that I just pulled up for our background. We've talked a little bit about the layer mask already down here below. If we click on that layer mask, it's going to add a mask to the current layer that we're working on. And we've talked about the ability to use black or white to paint on that mask to either show or hide what is on that same layer. Another way you can use masks, let's get rid of this one. You can do a quick mask. So if I just did a quick mask, which is this little washing machine over here, it would create a mask, as you can see by the layer being red. But if I move this, it's just masking basically the entire picture. That doesn't really accomplish anything for me. So I'm going to undo that and we'll go make a selection. I'll just use the magic wand to make a quick selection. And let's just select this house. Well, I guess we'll select the green. That works too. So we've got all of the green shades that are within that tolerance are selected now. So now if I use the quick mask, it's going to make a temporary mask, but it's just masking the selection basically. So that's the second way to do masks. Another thing you can do with masks is to create a clipping mask. Just delete that one. A clipping mask requires that you have more than one layer available to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and add another layer. I'm going to drag it down here and make it the background. I want to fill it with white. So I'll go up to Edit, Fill, and I've already got Contents White, so I'm going to say OK. So I have my two layers. I have my Switzerland picture, and then I have my background layer. So what I want to do is type in here, and then I only want the image to show in the letters. So I'll pull a type box over here, a horizontal type tool. Let's see if I can fit the whole word in there. Now you can see my cursor's moving, but it's not showing up. That's because my text layer is below the image. So I can go ahead and drag that up, and now I can look at my text. Anytime something's not showing up like you should, or like it should, go over and check the position of the layer, check to see if the eyeball icon is on or off. So I have my words there, but I don't want them in black. I actually want the image to be inside of those. And the way I'm going to do that is move that picture back up on top. And I'm going to create a clipping mask, or basically a mask that clips to the layer below it. I'll do that by clicking on my image layer and click on Create a Clipping Mask. I right-clicked on it. And now I have a clipping mask, so the image is clipped to the words. And I can actually take my Move tool and move that picture around so it has the parts of the picture in the letters where I want them to be. I want to show more mountains or whatever there. But that's kind of an explanation of the clipping mask, that it's a mask that actually works on the layer just below it. There are several ways to select, and we've talked about lots of those. Let me just get rid of these layers quick. We'll get rid of that. And go back here, make sure that it is not listed as a mask anymore. And I'm going to pull my picture back into alignment with my canvas, or almost into alignment. There we go. Move it up a little bit. So some other ways that you can select that we won't get too deeply in because they're pretty advanced. But over here in your layers panel, next to layers is channels. Channels is a way that you can select different colors and set them as a selection. For instance, I can click on red, and it's going to show me the red elements of the image. If I control click on it, then it actually creates a selection of those parts of the image. Now, it would probably be more effective if we deselect that. And there's a lot more green in this image than there is red. Let's see what happens with that. Control or Command click right on that icon, and it has selected that. Now, if I want to say, oh, I would like it to select the blue as well, I can turn that on to see, and I'll also click on the blue. And then if I want to save that, I just go right back over to layers, and I have that selection there. So to show you how the selection is, I'll just click on just choose a color and paint with it. So it's only allowing me to paint, even if I go way down past that mask, it's only allowing me to paint on that selection or what was selected. And then you can see it down here on the bottom, what it's looking like. It looks a little funny still because I turned off the channels. I'll go ahead and turn red back on, and then you can see it looks like the regular picture, except I used my red and I colored in all of the sky. So that's another way you can play with those channels and make very complex selections that way. I wanted to also talk with you about, let me just get out of here. We'll deselect everything. We're back to normal then. So I'm going to get rid of that bottom layer, and we're just going to put a regular layer mask up on my layer. So there are a few different things you can do with masks and with gradients. We're going to look way up here to the Gradients tab, which is next to Color and Swatches. Remember that these masks work on black and white. So when we get to the point of wanting to use a gradient on a mask, I'm going to come over and choose this gradient, which sometimes hides behind the paint bucket tool. Right now I have gradient selected though. So if I just take my cursor and draw a line, it is going fairly transparent, but that's because my gradient is not being black and white. So let's go up here and we'll make sure we've got the gradient that we want. I'll go to Basics, and I just want a black and white gradient. So in the box, you see a gradient now. I'm going to get rid of that mask, delete it, and I'm going to add another mask. But this time I have my gradient set to black and white. And now when I drag, you can see that the black conceals the image and the white reveals. And the closer to black it is, the more it hides the image. The closer to white it is, the more it reveals. There are different patterns you can use. So I'm going to step back again, and we're going to go over to the radial. Now I can draw a radial, which it comes out in concentrics from that circle pattern. Or I can come over and do any of these other options that it has. So there's the diamond, there's the reflected gradient, and then also the angle gradient. That's using it on a mask, okay? So I would want to, again, select the gradient, make sure I've chosen a gradient up here. And just for fun, let's look at the gradient options. Circular rainbow, not exactly what I was looking for. Okay. But you can play with those different gradients and pull them onto a mask, and it's going to let you show or hide in a very gradual way. And you can edit your gradient so that there's more or less showing on it. Another way to work with gradients, just delete that mask, would be to actually come up here in that gradient tab. So you can choose gradients based on their colors, blues or purples. We'll close those. Let's go for Let's go for grays. And here are my options for gray gradients. And these are the presets. So let's go ahead and just choose one. There it is. It's filling the screen and background. Let's play with a gray gradient with the other tool. This would be something like if you wanted to use a gradient or a color gradient of some kind as a background, or actually be seeing the gradient. If you want to use it on the mask, again, we're going to use this gradient tool over here on a layer mask. So I'm going to get rid of this gradient fill, and we'll just go back to our regular gradient. Notice it kept the preset from the gradient panel. So I'm going to select that black and white, and now that's the default here. Remember that black conceals, white reveals. So I'm actually going to hide that layer. I'm going to add a layer mask to this layer. This time I'm going to click on my gradient, and let's just draw that. Change the angle of it. And we're going to, oh, we have an invisible gradient going. And let's get rid of this guy up here. So it's not letting me draw on my mask at this point. Why? Because we were on the image. So we're going to come back over. I'm just going to get off of that gradient. Make sure that my mask is selected. Click on gradient again. And this looks like a good gradient I want to use. And just add that in. So several different settings. Again, you've got, you go back out of here. All the way back there. So my layer mask is where I'd want to drag the gradient to. I'm going to do a black and white, although you could do a gray, which would give you different versions. Depending on how dark gray, how much black and how much white would change the effect on your image. Let's try that one out. Take our gradient tool. And it is not doing anything for us. This is a good place to look because sometimes you're going to get so frustrated with Photoshop when it's not doing what you want to. An easy way to fix that whole situation, let's just close out this file. And let's see, no, we don't want to save the changes. So I'm going to reopen that file. I can select it right here as one of my recent files. And let's try that gradient again. I'm going to reset my colors. Add a mask. Going up to the black and white gradients, or the gray options. And we'll have it on normal. And now let's try drawing our gradient. And there you can see it's doing what we want. Don't worry about the checkerboard. That actually goes away. That's just showing you that it is transparent. So if I built another layer and pulled it underneath, and let's fill that layer, edit, fill. And we're going to make that one full of, let's say, foreground color, so the black. And now you can see that the black is showing through, so it was a transparent gradient on that picture. It's not a clipping mask because it's not doing anything with the layer below it. It's just a gradient mask because it's affecting the image that it is on. Go ahead and play with that a little bit. It takes a bit of practice to start using the gradients and actually come out with what you want it to be. You can also play with the blending modes once you have that. You make sure I'm on the right layer. And then I'm going to change the blending mode, and maybe I want to change that to darken, or multiply, and you can see it is making it very dark on pretty much everything. But then I get down to screen, which is one of the more translucent settings, and it does give me an option to see what that would do. Again, there's overlay, soft light, hard light, vivid light. So play with these settings and play with the blend modes as you are doing that. It helps if you kind of have a vision in mind of what you want to do. And then as you work through these things, when you see what you want, you're going to go, that's the one. That's the one I like. Remember, you can also move around your opacity here, which isn't super effective with a black background, but you get the picture. You can play with all those different things. You can play with the fill if you want to. So that is a quick trip into the quick mask. Remember, is over here on the left. The layer mask is over here. If you want to create a clipping mask, you need to have more than one layer, and you would right click on that layer and create a clipping mask. That would make it affect the layer below it. So jump in and play with that, play with the text option. That's a really good way to see how the clipping mask works. And we'll also be talking about some other Photoshop tools in the rest of this module.